Good evening, everybody. Once again, this is a UFC on Fox 2 post-fight recap with Stanley Thunderheart. And tonight, well, let me put it to you like this. Even though what I've read, most of the fights were really good that have happened, yet the fights that I've actually got a chance to see were three main fights that were on UFC on Fox tonight, which was definitely features Rashad Evans versus Phil Davis. And what a main event that was in a sense, but let me run down the card and run down the, of course, the winners and so forth, and then I'll get to the three events that I actually got a chance to see. So here we go. Now, Chris Camozzi versus Dustin Jacoby, and the winner is Chris Camozzi via submission. So congratulations on that. And Joey Beltran versus Lavar Johnson, and the winner is Lavar Johnson via a knockout. So congratulations on that victory. And Michael Johnson versus Shane Roller, and the winner is Michael Johnson, unanimous decision. Charles Oliveira versus Eric Wisely, and the winner is Charles Oliveira, submission. So that was pretty good. And Cub Swanson versus George Roop, and the winner is Cub Swanson via knockout. Mike Russow versus John-Olav Einemo, and the winner is Mike Russow, unanimous decision. And Evan Dunham versus Nick Lentz, and the winner is Evan Dunham via a TKO via a doctor stoppage. So unfortunately, obviously when there's a doctor stoppage, that usually means he's done some damage somewhere where the doctor had to check and whatever damage it was. I have to read more about it and find out what it is, but in any event, congratulations Evan Dunham on your victory. And this one was one of the fights that I thought could have been better. It was not the most exciting of the fights I have seen in a long time, but congratulations. Actually, I'm going to read this to you. Demain Maia versus Chris Weidman, and the winner is Chris Weidman via split decision of all things. I mean, let me put it like this. I guess this whole situation, this whole card changed when Sonnen was actually supposed to go on against Mark Munoz. But Mark Munoz had an elbow injury, so Michael Bisping was bumped up to face Chael Sonnen. And then Maia was actually supposed to originally face Michael Bisping, but instead Chris Weidman was called by UFC and was asked, do you want to take this fight? And this was like an 11-day notice, so to speak. So he didn't really have a lot of time to really prepare. But Chris Weidman, of course, saw the opportunity. He saw the opportunity to take his fight and his game to the next level. So, of course, what would he want to say? No, I'm not ready. Look, ready or not, he took it. And wow, I mean, look, let's give the man credit. I mean, let's give Demain Maia credit, too. I mean, Demain Maia, first of all, was expecting to fight Michael Bisping. He was preparing for that. And he had to prepare for someone else totally different, and so did Chris Weidman, of all people. And so, of course, Chris Weidman and Demain Maia, they fought each other. They didn't really necessarily, I mean, they just did some, of course, punches and stuff like that, but of course, the only real takedowns that were seen in this fight were mostly Chris Weidman taking down Demain Maia. Demain Maia didn't really have a lot of wrestling plan to how he really wrestled, or he didn't really was able to slap out any submissions on Chris Weidman. He just did mostly the striking game, which was fine and everything, but it got a little bit boring in the fight because they weren't really going after it. And plus, they both gassed out about around, like I said, in the middle of the second round of all things. And I mean, like I said, let's give at least credit when credit is due. At least Chris Weidman, like I said, he just barely came in unprepared as much as he was to face Demain Maia. And even like Randy Couture in the commentary says that there's not a lot of time to really prepare for an opponent, especially if you weren't expecting to fight at the event. Now, Demain Maia was expecting to fight for the event, but he didn't expect to fight Chris Weidman either. And so the only reason why I believe, they were both tired, they were exhausted, they gassed out when it really boils down to it. They were gassed, and then when they were hooking up, they barely were throwing punches and different things like that, but they still kept on going. Demain Maia throwing nice knees to the face and everything. That's what also kept him alive. But in any event, when it all boiled down to after the third round, it went the distance, and it became a split decision on Chris Weidman. So now Chris Weidman has, I mean, the fact that, yes, he did take an 11-day notice, he wasn't at his best, but he at least got to be proud of himself, at least now that he's stepped up and now he's going to go to a next level in the competition. And even though he may not be celebrating tonight, as far as in the parties, because he may just be tired and just laying down somewhere at a hotel or wherever he's supposed to be laying at, and he's just exhausted and just resting, and he's just thinking, yes, I'm at a new level, but I don't have the energy to party. I'm just going to just relax. But in any event, if you're resting, Chris, rest very well. You deserve it. It was an excellent victory nonetheless. Congratulations. And in the co-main event of the evening, Chael Sonnen versus Michael Bisping. I mean, we're talking UFC two biggest shit talkers of all time, or at least in the modern time anyway. There's actually more people that actually do talk a lot as well, but Chael Sonnen and Michael Bisping are notorious for that. And there are a lot of people that I know that said that I hope they just beat the hell out of each other. Me, I just wanted to see a good fight between those two trash talkers, and not to mention that Chael Sonnen would have had a better competition against, I believe, Mark Munoz, because Mark Munoz also had a wrestling background against Chael Sonnen, as well as good striking and everything. And not to mention Mark Munoz, once upon a time, whether people don't know it or not, when they were in college wrestling, they actually went against each other in collegiate wrestling at one point. Not Michael Bisping, Chael Sonnen against Mark Munoz, and Mark Munoz was victorious against Chael Sonnen in pure wrestling match. And they were actually going to fight each other again, only this time in MMA, but that never really happened. So, speedy recovery for Mark Munoz. Get well soon, and hope to see you back sooner rather than later. In any event, going back to this match, Chael Sonnen versus Michael Bisping. Michael Bisping, of course, is more of a striker. Chael Sonnen was of course, a grappler, a wrestler. So there was some slight advantage that Chael Sonnen had, at least I thought anyway, but when the fight really started to happen, basically Chael Sonnen started going off on him with throwing punches and everything at Michael Bisping. Michael Bisping goes dodged a little bit and got some hits, but Michael Bisping also fought back, and he took Michael Bisping down during the first round. He took him down right away, but then Michael Bisping just popped right up and actually had him against the fence. When it all boiled down to it, we all expected. Let's see, the first two rounds at least, we all expected Chael Sonnen to at least be dominant and just put him in the ground and just kind of grind and pound him and put submission attempts. But it didn't happen that way, because what happened is instead, even though Chael Sonnen amazingly was outstriking Michael Bisping was out wrestling him and put him in the cage for the most part during the first two rounds and so forth. But what really brought Chael Sonnen more points was he was able to at least do some takedowns. A couple takedowns in the first round, a couple takedowns in the second round, and actually in the second round he was able to really grind and pound him for that. And then even attempted submission attempts, had him on his back and everything like that. But Michael Bisping still escaped out of it, and was able to throw some good strikes. And even Chael struck him enough where he was able to bust him open near the eye, and had him cut up. But in the third round, that's when the real difference maker started happening. In the third round, Chael Sonnen really had him on the ground this time, and really started going to work on him, grinding and pounding him and everything. But he still had him on the ground for a longer time than he did in the first two rounds. So he really was dominant in the third round. I mean, beyond what he did. But the thing about it was he still could not finish Michael Bisping off. Michael Bisping finally got on his feet and was trying to, obstruct Chael and everything, but it was too little too late. And so unanimous decision victory goes to Chael Sonnen. And this one is the number one contenders fight for the middleweight championship against Anderson Silva, the current champion. So now Chael Sonnen will have a rematch against Anderson Silva, which will be very interesting because, of course, the last time when this happened, of course, Chael Sonnen was dominant against Anderson Silva during the first fight. But let's keep in mind too that Anderson Silva came in with injured ribs already, so he was not 100%. And second of all, Chael Sonnen was pumped up with steroids because it was caught in his system later on. He was suspended for a year, and all different types of other criminal charges were going on with him. And so he was, and then of course he's very confident and very entertaining as it is. He's basically talked to Joe Rogan. He was like, "Hey, Joe Rogan, do you feel it? Are you nervous? How does it feel to be near greatness?" And it's just like, well, and I thought to myself, and Joe Rogan was just like, okay, you're good, you're great, you did good. And to me, I was like thinking, yeah, that would have been more convincing if he was still pumped up full of steroids, or if he actually would have had a belt by now. But he didn't. And so let's just see. I mean, believe it or not, if he was so great, why did he have steroids in the system to begin with? Now let's see what he can do. Well, first of all, when Anderson Silva is 100% healthy, and him without the steroids. Let's see how good he really does against Anderson Silva. Because let's be honest with you, Chael Sonnen brought all upon himself. Okay, he brought this upon himself with his mouth and the way he does the way he lives his life and everything. And hey, he's an entertainment. He's an entertainer and everything. He's got his right to speak his mind and everything. At the same time, he's backed it up. But how far? I mean, where's the credibility in all this? I mean, I remember at the time when Muhammad Ali was the champion. Yeah, he ran his mouth and everything, but he was able to back it up, and he had gold around his waist and money. He had the gold. He had credibility, in other words. Tito Ortiz, when he was the light heavyweight champion of the UFC, he talked a lot of smack, but he had gold credibility. Sonnen has yet to do that, and so he needs to definitely beat Anderson Silva if he wants to get that kind of credibility that he really, as well as entertainment, because entertaining can only be so far, and people can only laugh so much, and so forth. But at the same time, if he doesn't have the gold around his waist, it's not going to do him any good. And on top of that, Chael, let's be honest. I mean, he put the pressure upon himself when he was all talking about Anderson Silva sucks. If, I beat you, then Anderson Silva, you go to the light heavyweight. In other words, you leave this division, the division that we're in. But if I lose, then I would quit MMA career forever. He would walk out and he would not fight MMA again. So he actually brought that upon himself. So he put the pressure upon himself on this one. So he better be able to deliver when he goes against Anderson Silva again. Because if he gets beat up and gets knocked out and submitted one more time against Anderson Silva, he can kiss his career goodbye. So, Chael Sonnen, good luck. I hope you make the best of the opportunity, because others have gone and failed and you haven't been any better. And you talk about being divine and everything, well, you're not as divine either yourself. So, just thought I'd bring you down to earth a little bit and just think about what I've just told you. Any event, I'm going to move on to the main event of the evening, which is Rashad Evans versus Phil Davis. And the winner is Rashad Evans' unanimous decision. I mean, this was just a one-way fight overall. It was not really, Rashad Evans really wants it. He's hungry, he's ready, he's tasted gold before, and he wants to taste it again. And now in his mind that Lyoto Machida is out of the way, in his mind, because that's the only man that knocked him out, he really wants to go against John Jones now, and I don't think going against John Jones will be any better for him. I think that he has had his final days back in the day when he had that belt, but we shall see. I mean, I'm not going to underestimate him either. I mean, he could be a possibility to beat up John Jones too, but I just think John Jones is too hard of a guy for him to beat. But let's get back to the real story at hand. Why was Rashad Evans so victorious tonight? It's very simple. Phil Davis had too much too soon. He was undefeated, 9-0 at one point, but he hasn't really been tested against a guy like Rashad Evans. Plus, he hasn't fought since March of last year, so that doesn't help him either, due to his injuries and things like that. And and like I said, Phil Davis was up against a real hungry, real mentally, spiritually tough in the heart, everything like that. And Phil Davis was lacking all of these. He lacked the desire. He lacked, God damn, well, where do I even begin? I mean, look, he lacked the desire, he lacked the hunger. I mean, he even lacked, the heart, the mental capacity. And that's just the internal part of it. Now, as far as the physical part of it, sure, he was in great shape, but what he lacked the snaps in his punches, the snaps in his kicks, and things like that. And so, and not to mention, he wasn't taking Rashad down as effectively until the third round, which he barely even took him down, which was too little too late. And just Rashad Evans dominated him. He had him on the ground. He grounded and pounded him. He outstruck him. He had him in a crucifix and grounded and pounded him like 4 different times in that same fight. And, I mean, the thing about it was Phil Davis was scrambling, like some, worm going out of the ground when you put him on the ground away from the dirt. It's like a worm scrambling. That's what he was doing. He was reminding me of a worm that scrambles around. And every time he would scramble around to get out of the crucifix, it just sapped more energy out of him, if anything. So definitely Phil Davis has to really get back into work and really start working on things. And I really feel he needs to fight more, if anything, if he's going to get better. And he's only going to get better with this experience. And that's what. And I agree with Joe Rogan when he said that he's going to get better. He just needs to, fight more. He just needs to really get himself more psychologically, mentally, spiritually, everything prepared from inside and out at this time. So especially if he wants to go against a champion one day, he really needs to get those things in order and get those things correctly and get those things, to the fullest. So that's the thing. Overall, it was a pretty good event. And like I said, it was one of those events that you want to see, and it doesn't always turn out the way you expect, but it is what it is. That's the sport of MMA sometimes. So, any event, I'm going to get going. So, good night, everybody. Take care of yourselves, and be safe. Healing is all that is.